All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with our pre-race media availabilities. We are now joined by Joey Logano, driver of the number 22 Moneyline Ford. We'll go ahead and open the floor to questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand. We'll get a wireless microphone to you. Start right up here at the front.
Jacob Zillman, Speed Sport Magazine. Joey, with the ARCA Series being here this week, you really kind of got your launch as a development driver back, ran some races for Venturini Motorsports. What was that experience like, and what made them a good development situation for you as you were trying to work your way up into the National Series?
Yeah, I think at the time I was running a lot of the K&N Pro Series races before that, and you only got to run some of the bigger tracks, and big tracks were considered Dover and New Hampshire. It's just still only a mile long. We consider those short tracks in today's world, with in the Cup world at least. But ARCA was a great avenue to be able to get experience on mile and a halves, super speedways, things like that. So. Pocono, when you go there for the first time, a track that's so difficult and different than most other racetracks you go to, having those laps and experience was something that helped me as a driver quite a bit. So, able to run those. I ran a race here in Talladega and one in Daytona in the ARCA cars, and it gives you the ability to kind of learn a little bit about the draft. Obviously, it's when it's your first time, you don't really know what you're doing out there. You don't know what moves to make, and you can tell when you watch the race that there's inexperience and then some mixed in with some experience where some drivers know how to make the moves and some don't. And as you move up through the ranks, that draft changes so much because everybody knows what they're doing, and the race, the complex of the race looks completely different. So it's just something that it's a good learning tool to get you to the next step, to get you a little bit of experience before you get out to the next level in the trucks and the Xfinity to the Cup.
Go back to Kelly.
Kelly Crandall, Racer.com. So Joey, after Richmond, Martin, the way you two had raced each other was clean and whatnot, but Martin says he doesn't know if you guys are good, obviously going back to what happened last fall. So are you two good, and has this whole thing get blown out of proportion every time you two are around each other on the racetrack?
I've never had a problem with him. So I guess that's his question to answer. No, I've never, hey, we were racing there towards the end of the race. I didn't feel like I got there in time to be able to make any moves. I needed to get by Clint a few laps earlier. By the time I kind of found some speed in the car, I was a little bit too late, and I just couldn't get there in time to try to make a pass. The only chance I really had to try to make a pass was going into 3, and that was it. So I needed a few laps to kind of set them up and catch some lap cars in the right spot and try to put them in the right spot to try to pass them. But I needed about, instead of 400 laps, maybe 405 laps would have been the difference. But, I'm sure there's plenty of times we all can go back and forth and say the same thing. So, it's, overall, like I said, to be upset with second place is a good spot to be in as far as speed in our race cars and where we are in the season right now. So, if we can just, if we execute a little bit better, I think we're sitting here with 4 wins right now instead of 1. So we just kind of, like I said, after Richmond, just clean up some of our mistakes throughout the whole team, myself included, and when we clean those up, we'll have definitely more victories under our belt.
Go to Caleb.
Caleb Whistler kicking the tires on net. The season enters the second quarter. How would you summarize the first quarter, and what do you feel like you need for the second quarter?
Yeah, I think we came out of the gate strong. The car has been fast. If I go through some of the races, Atlanta, we were in position to win with a loose wheel. I had to come down, in the last run. California, we finished second, and we should have finished there. We weren't fast enough to win there. When I look at some other races, Bristol, we were in position to win. In strategy, bit us a little bit. Richmond, you can argue, when we lost the lead coming down pit road, was the difference of losing control of the race, which could have been the win. there's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts throughout the first quarter of the season where, I feel like we were in position to win and we didn't capitalize. So, for me, I guess that only gives you a B, right? Because you got the speed and we didn't capitalize on the victories. But we have, solid finishes because we have speed in our cars. We're sitting second in points. We're not far out of where we need to be. But, it's tough to give those wins away when they're sitting right in front of you. But, we got a long ways before the playoff starts. And I know I'm confident we're going to clean that stuff up. It's not a big deal. I think we'll get to that point. It's just all about maintaining the speed that we have right now. That's the biggest piece is the speed that the Penske cars have and even the Gibbs cars have. It's going to be harder and harder to maintain that gap that we got. So we got to keep working hard to keep that as long as possible.
Go to Chris.
Chris Knight, catchfence.com. Joey, multiple times this week, it's been mentioned that your craft of bump drafting is the best in the business, and I was just wondering, how do you feel like you've developed that craft and maintained it throughout your career, and how much do you expect to use it this weekend?
I don't know how the draft's going to work this week, but I do feel like as far as the bump draft is something that I've worked on a lot in Xfinity cars or even when we tandemed. I felt like I was able to do a good job at being able to latch on and stay attached for a long time when we were able to do that. So I kind of hope it gets to that point because I feel like it falls into a strength of mine. But we'll have to kind of wait and see. I think this practice is going to be interesting to see if anyone can lock on to bumpers and go faster. With that big spoiler, there's so much what ifs we don't really know. So I think after you get through this practice here, we're going to really have a general idea somewhat of how we're going to go fast, how this race is going to play out, and what we need in our race cars. And then I think at that point we'll at least have something to go to work on. But Todd and I were talking about it before we got here. It's like, well, this can happen, this can happen, this can. It's like 4 or 5 scenarios that can't happen, and on how this race is going to play out. And until we get on the racetrack, we don't know. That's the facts of it. So we'll figure it out here in a few minutes.
We'll go to Rich, Lee, and then Claire.
Rich Colbert, Motor Racing Network, with Mother's Day coming up. Talk about your mom and the influence she had on your career and the impact.
Yeah, I think, my mom and probably most drivers' moms and parents have put a lot into, their sons or daughters' racing careers or their lives in general, right? Even outside of racing, your mom plays a huge role in what we do and how we get here. And I remember growing up racing, my mom, she's a typical Italian mom that cooks a lot of food. And every time we go to the racetrack, we won when it came to best food at the racetrack. We had more food than we could handle, which I think made people want to work on our race team, so that was good. Most of them were volunteers, so it was kind of a we'll work for food moment, and at least we had a lot of good food. So that was a fun piece and a good thing.
Go to Lee.
Lee Spencer, RacingBoys.com. Kind of curious, the Penske Fords, they've just been lights out here in the past, but you almost kind of wish that it wasn't so political when it came to racing at this track and at Daytona, just so you could, find the best car to go with if necessary and not always have to rely on your teammates or another Ford.
Not really, because I kind of think the political game, if you want to call it that, is kind of it's part of the competition, right? It's part of the fun of it. You're going to need help to be able to overcome other cars, right? To be able to beat other cars, other teams, you have to work together now. The draft has changed so much over the last few years. It really, because of Toyota, they started it when we went to Daytona and in the 500, and they kicked everyone's butt because they were selfless and stayed together. And then we kind of taken that model and tried to make it better in the way we work together and things like that, and have been able to find success because of that. So, it's part of the game now. The cars are not what made it like that. You know, everyone used to, I'd help my teammate here and there, but manufacturers didn't really work together, and, everyone wasn't that committed to each other. And once we saw how those 4 cars were able to stay committed to each other and beat everyone that day in Daytona, that forever changed the draft. Those moments are big key moments in super speedway history, in my opinion, on how we're going to evolve into the future. And when we all saw that, we all had to make a change unless we were going to get beat, right? We were all forced into the next move, and that's why you've seen teamwork become a bigger play throughout these races, and the stages have probably added to that once again. When you come here, is these stages with pitting in between. And trying to keep everybody together and all those things. So when everyone pits and all that, that's a big part of the game at this point. Yep, thanks.
Next to Claire.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. There's been a lot of talk all week on the air about the practice and how nobody really knows what to expect, and some people may show their cards or they may hang on to what they're trying to figure out until Sunday and then show more of it. But does it not put a lot of pressure on the drivers to go out there, since the engineers and crew chiefs are like, well, we just don't really know? Go out and check it out, try it out, feel it out. Talk us through that.
I don't know if it puts more pressure on us. We're trying to figure it out every week if we can, and that's the fun part about this sport, is that you have a good mix of engineering that can kind of predict a lot of things that's coming our way, yet there's still the old school feel, and what a driver wants and what we need to be able to make it happen. So we all need to communicate to be able to move a company forward together, and I think that's one of the fun challenges of our sport. And when you come to a racetrack with a new rules package, it's something that neither one of us are confident in, right? I mean, we go to Richmond, I could tell you, well, this is probably the things we're going to fight, and they can tell me, well, with the new rules, we're going to probably fight this stuff as well, and we can kind of collaborate and come together and make some good changes and be prepared when we get to the racetrack. Well, here, I've never raced anything with a spoiler this big, and neither have they. And so how is this draft going to work, right? And none of us really know. I mean, we can do as many studies and talk about it as much as we can, but until we get on the racetrack and you really see it, and you take it off the paper and you put it in reality, that's sometimes where you see a little bit of a change. So there'll be plenty of wheel spinning after this to be thinking about what we're going to do. And it's funny, these are the moments you go out there with 5 or 6 questions and you come back with 10 questions. You answer maybe 3 of them and get 10 new ones, and that's just how it works.
Will you then have to wait till Sunday to really know, or will you find out in the practices?
I think we'll get a general idea here in practice. I think there'll be who knows how cars are going to want to go out there and draft, and how many of them, and what you're going to need. But whether teams go out there, manufacturers go out there together, everybody goes together. And sometimes you just don't know until practice starts on how everyone's going to play out in practice. But I would assume there's going to be a decent-sized group of cars learning what they need.
We'll finish up with Dustin.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. So, Joey, how does somebody prepare for the unknown? I'm guessing a typical week, if the rules hadn't changed, you would have watched the most recent race, you would have watched some other things. So did you suddenly have all this other free time for your child now, or were you watching the 2010 Talladega race to look at tandem drafting reminder? How does somebody prepare so that when they're on the track and you start seeing things, you along with your experience can put the 2 and 2 together and answer some of those questions?
Yeah, it's it's just trying to expect the unexpected. You're trying to prepare yourself. You look back at some notes from back then. You look at some stuff from more recent events. And honestly, I think a lot of that prep work that you typically do maybe just gets shifted to Friday night, Saturday night type of stuff. Because you don't know you don't want to just overload yourself with 3 different races and you don't know what's going on and you can't pick anything out. I think it's for me at least, it's probably a little better for me to just kind of figure out what we got here first and then kind of study and kind of add to the strategy of what we need from there.
So this is an easier week going.
I don't know if I'd call it easier. because you're still thinking about what can happen a lot, so I don't think it makes it any easier from that case at all. Yeah.
Joey, thank you, and good luck this weekend.
All right, great. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks.
See you later.
See ya.